Tears of the Kingdom just released, and I don't think I need to convince many people when I say this game is extremely good. There's been a lot of mediocre game releases in the last few months, but I knew I could count on Tears of the Kingdom to deliver, and it's probably surpassed my expectations when I think of it. Now, minor spoilers for Tears of the Kingdom, by the way, not really. It's not story related, but it just has to do with the abilities that you unlock throughout playing, if you care about that. As someone who wants to make games in the future myself, I like to think more critically about games and question a lot of things to understand them better while I'm playing. I'll ask why a game made gameplay mechanics the way they did, and then research how it was done or how it could have been done if there's no definitive answer by the developers themselves. I think it's important for any job to ask yourself more critical thinking questions that make you dive deeper into how something works. The first few hours I played Tears of the Kingdom, I kept wondering what makes this game so much better than all the previous AAA titles that have come out in the past few months. And to me, it is the freedom of creativity. Now, of course, this doesn't apply to every single video game out there, because there are still plenty of good games that don't allow for a lot of creativity. For example, The Last of Us and God of War. In both games, you traverse a linear story while fighting enemies and completing the next objective given to you, while occasionally also solving puzzles. Typically, puzzles aren't really that creative because there's only one solution to solve them, but they can be creative in the way that they present a problem to you. This is a creative problem that you're given. You're not exactly given the freedom to creatively solve the problem. However, there are different ways for you to complete a section of the game, whether it be stealth killing every enemy like a ghost, or being a complete barbarian and unleashing all hell on your foes. You also have different methods of killing these enemies, and sometimes cool things you can do with them, but those choices are still pretty limited to what the developers intended. Now let's take a little niche game called Minecraft. Minecraft is a sandbox game that gives you an unlimited survival world to do whatever your heart desires within the universe that Mojang created. You can become a deep cave spelunker and become the most powerful being alive by mining every single diamond, or you could build castles that rival real-life engineering. Or you could just be a simple farmer who tends the land and lives his days pretty stress-free. Now obviously The Last of Us and God of War are completely different games than Minecraft, but how many times do you find yourself going back to Minecraft compared to the first two? The freedom of creativity allows for players to not only have a great first experience with the game, to experiment and play around with the tools given, but replay the game significantly more. Of course, there are still plenty more elements of a game to talk about that don't relate to the freedom of creativity, but it plays a major role in games. When Breath of the Wild came out, everyone loved it because not only was it a solid Zelda game, it was a solid action-adventure RPG, and still is to this day. It gave us a proper and unique open-world game that was fun to explore and gave us plenty to do. The need to gather items for food or elixirs felt organic and grounded rather than superficial like a lot of other games. The shrines mostly offered unique puzzles and rewarding equipment, while sometimes offering environmental puzzles to get to the shrine itself. It gave you the freedom to climb just about anything and go anywhere you wanted. One of the best parts of Breath of the Wild is not necessarily creativity, but the freedom to play at your own pace. The main quest gives you 4 areas to go to in any order, but the best part is that you don't even need to do them. The final boss is able to be beaten at any point in your playthrough. Now obviously it isn't easy if you don't do that first main quest, but it's made possible to the player and gives you the freedom to do it. Now Tears of the Kingdom, it might be bold of me to say, but it is a nearly perfect sequel in terms of gameplay for Breath of the Wild. The world is still the same land that Breath of the Wild took place, but gives so much more exploration because of verticality. Now you're able to traverse islands in the sky as well as a massive chasm underneath Hyrule. Not only is there new land to be explored, but Hyrule itself has changed enough to where it's still fun to explore again. Shrines have all changed positions from Breath of the Wild and also seem to offer more engaging puzzles a lot of the time, but I also think that's due to the best part of the game, the abilities. In Tears of the Kingdom, you are stripped of your previous Breath of the Wild abilities in exchange for arguably much better ones. This is where the freedom of creativity comes into play. Instead of magnetism, you're given telekinesis that can pick up just about anything, and then you can glue them to another item. Not only that, but there seems to be no limit to how much you can glue together, only physical constraints of size. This is helped by the addition of devices called Zonai devices, essentially electronic items that allow for unique mechanisms. Do you want to build an airboat to get across the marsh faster? Done. Want to build a glider with a fan to get across a gap or soar the skies? Done. Want to just build a big ass bridge because you're too lazy to climb something? Done. The only constraint to the Zonai devices is the battery that prevents you from using these things infinitely. But that would essentially just be God mode if you did have unlimited battery, so I understand why they did that. The other cool ability, which is personally my favorite, is the fusion ability, allowing you to fuse any interactable item to your weapons. This makes the weapon variety so much more vast for the player, also allowing you to just create an insanely powerful late game weapon. You can take a normal broadsword, fuse it with a boulder bigger than Link, and now you're wielding Excalibur before Arthur came along, and can even break rocks with it. This applies to Zonai devices too, allowing for some really cool fusions. You can attach a cannon to a stick to make it a literal boomstick that fires cannonballs at any moment. Attach a fire or laser emitter to your weapon for some extra range. Attach a rocket to your shield and fly 50 feet in the air at any moment. Hell, you can put a fish on a stick just because you feel like it. You can even attach a bomb that grows from plants onto your arrows to shoot bomb arrows now. Not even related to fusion, but I know they did it because of fusion. Now you can just throw items from your inventory if you want to. As much as I miss Stasis, I think the new ability Recall is more fun. Plus, Stasis isn't really necessary anymore with the new telekinesis power. Recall is pretty simple in concept. You select an object and it moves back in time for a certain length of time, although I don't think there is a cooldown on it. It's not the most complex ability, but it allows for much more creative and fun shrine puzzles. The last of the 4 main abilities is Ascend, where you can just turn no clip on, except you can only go up. And you also have to be fairly close to the ceiling. This ability is really just a movement ability, but it is really useful for vertical travel, especially since there are islands that are a mile high in the sky. The game gives you these abilities and encourages you to experiment with them all the time. There are resource stations everywhere providing basic materials to be able to create with. Not only that, but there's literal gumball machines that give you portable Zonai device capsules to open them up anywhere you need them. I haven't even beaten more than a couple main objectives within the 20 hours I've spent with it, just because it is so much fun to explore and experiment with the game's mechanics and features. Tears of the Kingdom has managed to outcompete so many recent AAA titles, it's actually kind of insane. Part of me wishes Nintendo didn't make this game because they're an awful company who pretty much hates their fans. But similar to a middle-aged man with a drinking problem, I just can't help myself from crawling back to their games. They also managed to make this game run on a 6+ year old console, with minimal stuttering. Minimal stuttering! Do you understand how hard that is to do for some games? They're putting a lot of studios to shame with this game, and I can only hope it gets better from this point on. At least Diablo 4 is looking pretty good, even though Blizzard Activision is arguably an even worse company. Alright, that's all I have to talk about. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a sign to hold up for this dumbass.